Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about aperture. The aperture is just the size of the hole. The larger the aperture, the more light the lens emits to the camera sensor. For a hobbyist photography, you may want a large aperture lens for two reasons. One is low light, the other is blurry background. So first, let's talk about low light. Under low light, your camera cannot gather enough light, so you have to increase the exposure time, or increase your camera's ISO, or increase your aperture size. Increasing aperture size will produce shallower depth of field with a blurry background. This picture was taken with a Nikon 50mm f1.8s lens with a camera Nikon Z5. It was taken about 2 years ago. Almost 3 years ago, yeah. So you can see this picture is very grainy. If you zoom in, you can see a lot of grins on my daughter's face. This is because the restaurant, actually we were dining outside the restaurant. It was extremely dark. There was this little candle thingy, electric fake candle, yeah, on the table, which gives you some light, and there's some street light. This place was outside the restaurant. So it was so dark that you could barely read the menu. That's how dark it is. So for an f1.8 lens with a modern full-frame camera with decent low light performance, the sensor with a reasonably good sensor like Sony sensor, you should be able to get a clean picture under the vast majority of the situations, including a lot of indoor low light situations like inside of a restaurant. If your nightlife is very active, you have very active nightlife, you go to restaurants, bars, clubs, you want to take pictures in dark streets, dark alleys, then by all means invest in a large aperture lens, f1.4, f1.2. It will allow you to take pictures at relatively low ISO, so you have less grains in the picture, high quality images. But for most consumers, I think f1.8 is sufficient. It takes care of 99.9% of the needs. Because I didn't encounter a situation like this, so dark outside, in a matter of years. So the situation happens so infrequently that I think f1.8 lens is sufficient for me for low light situations. I'm talking about a reasonably good full frame sensor. Yeah, if you're on APS-C camera, your pixels are much smaller. Each pixel gathers a lot less light. There's a lot more noise under low light. Then you may want to invest in a faster lens, a lens with a larger max aperture. So number one, low light performance. For a hobbyist, I think 1.8 is enough. If you have the money, you don't mind the extra weight and cost, go for it. Buy a 1.4, 1.2 lens. The second reason to have a large aperture lens is to have the blurry background. For portraiture or product photography, you want the background to be blurry. This picture of my wife was taken with the 50mm f1.8 lens as well. This is the Canon Nifty 50 version, which is optically is way worse than the Nikon version, yeah. But it costs only like $100. Nikon costs like $500. So there's difference in price. So you can see the people in the background. They are kind of blurry because large aperture. I was reasonably close to my wife in this restaurant, and the people behind us were not far away, but because large aperture, it's blurry. If you want a subject to stand out, and this apparently is still distracting, it's not blurry enough. Had I had a 1.4 lens, these folks would have been even blurrier. So another reason to have large aperture lens is to have a blurry background, to help your subject to stand out. And depth of field, if you want to achieve shallow depth of field, you probably should opt for a full-frame lens, a full-frame camera. Full-frame camera, the sensor size, the depth impacts depth of field, because you have to move closer to your subject with a full-frame camera in order to fill your frame with your subject, right? Which causes background blur. Also, the focal length is another factor. This picture of my daughter was taken with a 7200 f2.8 lens at 200mm focal length, and you can see my wife in the background is completely blurry because the focal length and the aperture 2.8 is still pretty large, and also this is a full frame camera. So if you want to achieve this kind of artistic blurry background, you may want to invest in a large aperture lens, 1.8, f2, f2.8 for telephoto lens, or f1.4, and you want a full frame sensor. camera. May also want to opt for telephoto lens. But with today's technology, you should be able to create or simulate the blurry background with a piece of software. So this could have been achieved with a piece of software. It's up to you, whether you want a large aperture lens or not. But the two main reasons to have large aperture lens for a hobbyist, I would say, one, low light situation, two, blurry background. And for most hobbyists, I think a f1.8 prime lens should meet your needs. If you have additional money, if you have the budget, you don't mind the extra weight, you don't mind the extra cost, go for a larger aperture lens. But to me, at least, my shooting style, I don't have a very colorful night life, so f1.8 is all I need. Okay, thank you